Nestled in the heart of the Midwest, Stark County epitomizes tranquility and community spirit. Here, lush landscapes meet quaint town squares, where neighbors greet each other by name and children play freely under the watchful eyes of the community. It's a place where annual fairs and high school football games are the highlights of the year, and local diners know your order by heart. But beneath this serene surface, a disturbing tale was about to unravel, shaking the community to its core. A chilling silence, a call unanswered, the beginning of a grim discovery. In the quiet of Stark County, a disturbing scene unfolded in the home of Suzanne Taylor. Her boyfriend, concerned after numerous calls went unanswered, ventured to her house only to stumble upon a scene that would haunt the community forever. Suzanne and her two teenage daughters, Kylie and Taylor, were found lifeless, their home transformed into a grim tableau. The air was thick with disbelief as the boyfriend, paralyzed by shock, dialed 911. Responding officers arrived swiftly, stepping into a living nightmare. The scene was meticulously documented, every detail a silent witness to the atrocity. The community of Stark County, usually wrapped in serenity, was pierced by the sirens of police cars and ambulances that somber evening. As the news spread, a pall of sorrow descended upon the town. Neighbors gathered, whispering in hushed tones, their faces etched with grief and fear. What was first a welfare check quickly escalated into a full-blown murder investigation. From friend to suspect, the unsettling transformation of George Brinkman. George Brinkman's story is not one of sudden outbursts or glaring red flags. It's subtler, woven into the very fabric of his relationships with Suzanne Taylor and her daughters. He was, by all accounts, a close family friend, often seen at their home, sharing meals and part of their everyday lives. George's background was unremarkable at first glance. He grew up in the same community, worked various local jobs, and maintained a seemingly normal social life. However, beneath this mundane exterior, investigators began to notice anomalies. His behavior, once familiar and friendly, started showing cracks. Extended periods of unexplained absence, erratic emotional responses, and a peculiar interest in the personal details of Suzanne and her daughters' lives began to draw attention. As these details accumulated, George's proximity to the family shifted from comforting to chilling. With each passing day, the weight of suspicion grew heavier, casting a long shadow over his once benign presence. As the community reeled from the loss, suspicion began to tighten around a familiar face. A horrifying pattern emerges, linking quiet homes through violent ends. As Stark County reeled from the shock of the Taylor family tragedy, another sinister discovery was made. Jean and Roberta Johns, a couple well-regarded in their community, were found lifeless in their home under circumstances eerily reminiscent of the Taylor case. This chilling similarity was not lost on the authorities, who now faced a broader, more complex investigation. The murder scenes shared haunting parallels. Both scenes were marked by a meticulous lack of forced entry, suggesting the victims had likely known their attacker, possibly even welcoming him into their homes. The method of murder was brutally similar, with each victim bound and then tragically deprived of life in a manner that spoke of both rage and calculation. This pattern of violence pointed increasingly towards one man, George Brinkman. Known to both the Taylor family and the Johns, Brinkman's connections to the victims transformed from mere coincidence to a focal point of suspicion. His presence at social gatherings, his interactions with the victims, once casual and unremarkable, now painted a grim picture of potential premeditation. The authorities delved deeper into Brinkman's past, uncovering a trail of relationships marred by sudden, intense disagreements and estrangements. Friends and acquaintances described him as charming yet occasionally unsettling, his demeanor shifting unpredictably. These personal accounts added layers to the emerging profile of a man who could camouflage deep-seated turmoil beneath a veneer of normalcy. As the investigation expanded, the stakes mounted. With two families devastated, the community's sense of security was shattered. The pressure on law enforcement was immense, not only to solve the crimes, but to restore peace to a community gripped by fear. With multiple families shattered, the authorities raced against time to connect the dots. In the cold confines of an interrogation room, a suspect unravels. George Brinkman, sitting across from seasoned detectives, his every gesture under scrutiny, began what would be a grueling marathon of questions and answers. The room, stark and uninviting, echoed with the heavy silence that often preceded his responses. Detectives, armed with evidence and a timeline that painted a grim picture, probed George with precision. They asked about his whereabouts on the nights of the murders, his relationship with Suzanne Taylor and her daughters, and his seemingly innocuous yet frequent visits to the Johns household. Each query peeled back layers of George's facade, revealing inconsistencies and evasive maneuvers. As the hours ticked by, George's demeanor shifted from composed to visibly shaken. It was his inadvertent slips, the slight stutters, and the way his gaze avoided the piercing stare of the law that began to paint a more telling picture. His connections to both crime scenes, once circumstantial, started to form a more sinister link. Each word, each pause, each denial added layers to the already complex character of George Brinkman, piecing together a puzzle of personal connections and hidden motives. In the heart of Stark County, a chilling narrative began to unfold as detectives meticulously gathered forensic evidence, sifted through witness statements, and analyzed George Brinkman's own startling admissions. The task was daunting, yet imperative, to weave together fragments of truth from a tapestry stained with tragedy. Forensic evidence played a pivotal role in this complex investigation. Minute fibers, fingerprints left carelessly on a doorframe, and the haunting match of DNA samples. These silent witnesses spoke volumes, drawing a line directly from the crime scenes to Brinkman himself. Each piece of evidence was like a whisper in the night, revealing secrets George thought were well hidden. Witness statements added layers to the story, painting a vivid picture of Brinkman's interactions with Suzanne Taylor and her daughters. Friends and neighbors recounted his frequent visits, his sometimes overfamiliar demeanor, and a subtle but growing tension that seemed to underpin his relationship with the family. It was these narratives that began to sketch a chilling portrait of a man who was more than just a family friend. But what truly brought depth to the investigation were Brinkman's own admissions. In moments of calculated confession, he revealed more than just his actions. He exposed his motivations. The detectives probed the psychological labyrinth that was Brinkman's mind, uncovering a blend of jealousy, perceived betrayal, and a disturbing sense of entitlement. His emotional ties to the victims, once bonds of affection, had morphed into chains of obsession and control. As the investigation deepened, the psychological and emotional analyses of Brinkman painted a complex picture of a man torn by inner demons. His relationship with the victims, once seemingly benign, was revealed to be a dangerous catalyst for his heinous acts. As the evidence mounted, the portrait of a killer emerged from the shadows of unthinkable acts. In the aftermath, a community reflects and a mystery lingers. The tranquil streets of Stark County, once bustling with the simple joys of community life, turned into corridors of whispered theories and a palpable tension. Neighbors looked over their shoulders with a newfound wariness. Trust, once given freely, now came with reservations. In coffee shops, at grocery stores, discussions invariably turned to the safety of their own homes. What could prompt such brutality in their midst? Local authorities, spurred into action by the community's anxiety, ramped up security measures. Patrols increased, neighborhood watch programs were revitalized, and workshops on safety awareness became a regular occurrence. A collective effort to mend the fabric of community trust began, but the scars remained, visible in the watchful eyes of the residents. Yet, beyond the immediate shock and the steps taken to secure the area, deeper, more troubling questions lingered about George Brinkman. What dark thoughts occupied his mind? What could drive a seemingly familiar face to such depths of violence? These questions hung heavy in the air, as elusive and opaque as the motives of the man himself. Theories abounded, each adding layers to the persona of George Brinkman, yet none could definitively pierce the veil of his psyche. Psychologists and criminal experts weighed in, sketching profiles of disturbed minds, but the true essence of his motives remained shrouded in mystery. Stark County would never forget, and the echoes of these tragedies continue to resonate through its quiet streets. A tale of tragedy, a community forever changed. As we have seen, the Stark County murders, orchestrated by George Brinkman, shook the foundations of what appeared to be a tranquil community. The close-knit ties he had with his victims turned their trust into their peril, highlighting the chilling reality that danger often lurks where it is least expected. In the quiet heart of America, the story of George Brinkman reminds us that sometimes the deepest horrors are found not in strangers, but within those we once trusted.